Do you ever doubt your purpose in life, especially when facing different or difficult seasons? And what do you do to help you live fully in God's presence? Today, I'm delighted to be speaking to a fellow writer and speaker and a fellow drama queen, I guess, Peg, Arnold, a Christian speaker and author and encourager. And she speaks to the many different seasons that women walk through: joy and loss and struggle and waiting. We will not have enough time to talk about all those seasons. Peg, welcome, Peg. And tell us a
Oh,
little about
thank you.
you're welcome. Tell
Oh,
us about your family and where you're from, please.
thank you for this. It's exciting to be here, Sue, with all your listeners as well. I live right now in Colorado, but I grew up in Michigan and then met my husband in college. We were RAs in the same dorm. He whisks me off to Maryland, where I learned a lot of lessons there, but we spent 40 years in Maryland raising our kids, and I thought that was
An
where
East Coaster.
an East Coaster, right outside of Washington, D.C.
Wow.
And I thought that's where we would be for life. My daughter lived in Virginia at one time, and my son lived up in Pennsylvania. And I thought, great little triangle there. And all of a sudden, they both ended up out in Colorado for different reasons.
Wow.
And my husband and I were looking at ourselves, and he says, "Well, I'm ready to move." And at that time, I had a full-time job in education. I was a counselor in a middle school and teaching professionals as well as having a vibrant speaking ministry on the East Coast.
Hmm.
So I could not see a move coming up for us. And I was out for a walk because it just kept on nudging. My husband kept on saying, I think we need to move. I was out for a walk and I said, Lord, you always said if I was going to leave my full-time education job, I would go into ministry full-time. What are you doing? Putting Colorado in the future. And on that walk, and it's not a verbal voice, but it was that voice that you could not deny. And he said, what makes you think I don't have things prepared for you
Hmm.
in Colorado? Just exactly in that. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that I was living my life with what my expectations were and just assuming that God was in in that court and going to bless all of that. And he was asking me to jump off a cliff, open my arms, and look down where I could not see the bottom and trust him completely with a new direction.
Peg,
So
someone told me years ago that trusting God means jumping off a cliff and finding out that it's only a curb.
you're right.
And I
You're
think
right.
that's
Uh,
what
it-
happened to you.
well, he let me go a little further than just a curve.
Doesn't he
He let me fall free for a little bit before the parachute went up. Let's put it that way.
Oh, that's good.
But it was trusting him. I got home from that walk and my husband looked at me because I'd been weeping
Mm.
and he said, well, something happened. And I told him, I said, we're moving to Colorado,
Oh,
and then explained the story to him. And that's when we started really being fully engaged with, okay, what's this going to look like? How do we make this? And it involved, as I said, I was working full time with education, and it involved retiring from education. I never say I'm retired. I say I'm repurposed.
there we go.
So because I knew that I was going to be going into full-time ministry, and we came out to Colorado. We now have been out here for 8 years, and we have 8 grandchildren who live within a 5 mile radius of us. So it's a wonderful season for us to be in that I never would have expected, and still 8 years later to this day my husband and I will look at each other and say, God knew that, and that's why we're here.
Mm.
God knew that, and that's why we're here. And there have been so many examples. So, those words that he said, what makes you think I don't have things planned for you in Colorado? 8 years later, I can see the hand of God woven into our lives even today, that He knew back when I was kicking and screaming, saying, no, this is not what I want to do.
Well, I'm sure that your story resonates with a lot of people listening today because we always think we know what's going to happen next. And then for us to even have that assumption is ridiculous because we don't know the next minute, much less the next 8 years. But God knows all things. And yet I'm not
Absolutely.
necessarily willing to follow him off that curb. We want to have things, our ducks in a row, even if it's just two ducks. And you had little eight ducklings waiting for you. Praise God for that. So wonderful. Now, why do you call yourself a drama queen? Because I'm sure other
Oh,
people call me a drama queen, so I'd like to know why you're called one.
well, I think I was probably called a drama queen in my teenage years, but I think it had a completely different context. I my ministry, the way I ended up, the way God ended up opening the doorway to ministry is, as I said, I was in education. So when I would talk at my church, and I was a leader of women's ministry in my church, when I would talk, I was always use visual aids. I'm a firm believer in that. I teach it in the education, I taught it in the education systems. I teach it now to speakers and writers, the power of visual aids and props that you use. And the Lord, about probably 30 years ago now, opened the door and said, I want you to integrate drama. And I saw it twice in that time that he started nudging at my house. My nudging at When he started nudging at my heart. I saw it twice done, one time very well
Mhm.
and one time very poorly.
Interesting.
And with that, the Lord was really speaking to my heart,
Mm,
saying, I want you to do it in the way that it hit me when it hit me emotionally.
mm.
So when I started getting talks and asking to speak, and this is only in my own church, and I was involved with a retreat organization that held 3-day retreats for ecumenical groups. And so I did a lot of speaking on those. And I started integrating drama into it. And
Let
I
me
thought
let me
they were
ask
just dramas for that.
let me ask you this question. If someone
Hmm.
listening today says, "Well, this is not for me because I'm not a speaker and I'm not a conference teacher," so how would you say they can integrate uh, props and visual aids and just being a good mother?
Oh, easily, because there are so many ways. If you're a mom or a grandmother and you're trying to teach a lesson, is to take a prop to be able to explain it. Let's talk about if you have a teenage daughter who's really stressed and constantly worrying about things, and you're worried about her.
Sure.
Um, you could take her backpack and and say, I'm really concerned about the stress that you have. And if you carried a kid's backpack these
Yes.
days, they
Ridiculous.
weigh probably 30 to 40
I know.
pounds. And you take out and you say, within this backpack, and take out the math book, or well, I don't think they carry. I don't know what kind of books they carry. Their backpacks are heavy. Anyway, take out things and talk about, if this were one of the things that's bothering, what would you label it as?
Mm,
And you start setting that out and taking it out and labeling it, and then talking about, is there something we can do to address this? And hold up the object and have her hold part of the book and you hold part of the book and say, if we hold it together,
mm,
or if we find help for it, it makes it less stressful for you just by sharing it.
mm.
And that's just one small way.
Yeah, but
There are so many lessons with children we can use as well.
well, that's beautifully said. And I think that alone could really bless someone who's listening today because we all have kids. We carry their burdens. It's like
Hmm.
as adult
You
children,
do.
they'll call you and tell you something they're worried about, and then you're worried about for the next 3 weeks, and they feel better just having told you. So it's so unfair. Let me ask you a personal question. Have you ever doubted God's purpose in your life, and has it only happened once?
Well, I would have to say yes. I have doubted his purpose many times, so it has happened more than once. I I can remember long ago, just, when you're starting college and you're wondering what to major in. And I accepted the Lord when I was a teenager. So, but I went into college and I was playing both sides of the coin. I was trying to be the good little Christian girl, but also the get along at the party girl, and trying to play. And that causes confusion in, Lord, what's your purpose for me? Um, Going through learning how to integrate that. It was the Lord gently just loving me through that disobedience and just gently bringing people in my life to speak truth into me. An RA put a verse on my door when I was in college: trust in the Lord in all things, with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding, acknowledge him and he will make your path straight. And it made me feel like, oh my gosh, somebody is seeing through my mask, because
Mm,
I thought she saw the good little Christian part, and I realized that the Lord had allowed her to see the other part that I was playing, and it started that conflict inside of me, and I was a PK, so going back to my faith just was instilled in me. And so going back to my faith and meeting my husband, and he was a believer, and so we joined that and just trying to integrate that inner struggle. But I think we all struggle with purpose because we have that inner struggle of how do we live our lives as i- if you're, especially if you're a people pleaser. I was a people pleaser, and that's why I ended up playing those two different roles.
mm,
As I integrated more, and I ended up going into education, and then I ended up moving out of my area where I had all the contacts in the world to for a job, and couldn't find a job when we moved to Maryland. So once again, I'm in doubt. Am I really where God wants me to be? I knew I was married. I knew I was head over heels in love, but where we were living certainly was not
mm,
helpful for me as far as finding my way into where I thought my purpose was. And there was a string of events. I got involved with a church. I met a woman when I was teaching swimming lessons. And she was a believer, and she opened the door for me to teach
mm,
in private schools. And so, you know, every time, just, and I talked about questioning God's purpose in this move to Colorado. We'd lived in the same house for 32 years, Sue.
mm,
To make that kind of a move, you do question, what
mhm,
is the purpose behind this? What does God want to do with this? And every time I questioned his purpose, it's not that I got an answer right away, but he gently rein, reinforced it. He gently reassured me. So in the wait, I knew that he had a plan somewhere.
mm.
Sometimes I had to wait longer than others. And when we wait a long time, doubt creeps in.
Sure.
And when doubt creeps in, there are those verses, that Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust in the Lord. I went back to that over and over. When my husband lost his job, Jeremiah 29, 11 through 13, God has plans for you, plans to prosper, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. When we didn't know how we were going to, live from day to day without his income, that, there are so many things that happen in life that made me doubt my purpose, the direction I was going, how we were going to handle things, but always looking to God and knowing He's got a plan.
Mm,
And even though I'm waiting and I feel like I'm groping in the dark, or I feel like I'm falling free fall off of that cliff, trusting in Him that He has a plan, and looking for places to be grateful, even in the free fall, even in the depression, even in the storm.
mm. Has God ever disappointed you?
Hmm. I think God has disappointed me a lot of times in the short future,
Mm.
but he's never disappointed me in the long future.
What do you
I
mean?
think when I think my prayer has been answered and it was a no,
Oh.
I was disappointed in God's answer.
Yeah.
But when I waited and saw why God answered it like that,
Mhm.
um, we had a situation where uh, it's at it's was at my son's graduation week, and there was a series of things that happened one right after another. And one of those things was the surgery of my dad. He couldn't come to my son's graduation. The very sudden death of my father-in-law out of the blue the day they were supposed to land to be at my son's graduation. He had a massive heart attack at 70 and died.
Oh my
And
goodness.
then on my son's graduation, my husband lost his job. It was bang, 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 bang. And when you talk about being disappointed by God, it's like,
Whoa.
why you do, and why is it, why are you timing it
Yeah.
amidst the juxtaposition of something joyful
Hmm.
and something extremely painful?
Hmm.
And it's only in looking back that we learn what those lessons are. But I think there's many times we do get disappointed by God, but it's short term if we keep our eyes. We have a choice. So when we're disappointed by God, we have a choice to stay there in the anger and the self-pity
Hmm.
of things didn't go the way I wanted it. When we were little, nobody loves me, everybody hates me. I guess I'll eat my worms.
Right.
And if we stay in that place, we can stay disappointed and get angry at God.
Hmm.
But if we go to God and just say, why God? He's okay with us laying every angry word on him. He's okay with us laying every disappointment on him. And then just saying, help me see you in this.
And sometimes he doesn't even answer that prayer for quite a while.
You're right. And it's sometimes only in the retrospect of looking back that we can see the hand of God weaving through and that he was holding us
Mhm.
all the time,
Yeah,
even though we felt like we were broken.
and the whole definition of faith is that we don't see. And yet,
Yeah,
as humans, we just insist that we see what's going on.
we do. We do.
I,
I want to see it, God.
yeah, like a child. And we should know better at our age. Um, I think you've already answered this in several examples, but my question is, how important is community in your walk with God? Because it sounds like a lot of people have come into your life through your walk with God and given that gentle push or nudge to walk closer to Him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Community is extremely important because where I can get self-focused and only look at things through my lens, a good Christian brother or sister can come in and give me another way to look at that situation. Also, a Christian brother or sister, and I would recommend more close friends with Christian sisters when you're a woman
Yeah.
than Christian brothers. But we are couple friends with many people, and I have uh, biological brothers that speak into my life and pray for me as well.
Mhm.
And my father was a huge person that spoke into my life. I was very blessed to have Christian parents that spoke into my life. But having Christian sisters that weep with you, that laugh with you, that listen and hold you, that send you an encouraging word or a Bible verse that spoke to them or something they see in your life that they're grateful for. Those are precious jewels in the midst of a time when you're confused, when you are in a deep darkness, when you don't know the next step to take. Community is what has held me up because they have helped keep my eyes where God is.
So true. I know that some people are introverts who are listening, they would say, but how do I get those friends? What would you say?
Mm, mm. That's a good question. Because I am an extrovert, and so it comes very naturally to me. However, I'd say if you're an introvert, you're not looking for a large group of people. You're looking for that one person that you connect with. And I believe that when we get involved with a church community, that a church community will hopefully bring some of those people into your lives. But I also believe that God can bring people into our lives through interest groups, through and for I know interview for I know for interviews I know for introverts it's very hard to step into a
Mhm.
circle of a group, but finding something that you would have in common with. And even if finding somebody that you may not know well, but ask them to go with you. Those types of finding a Bible study to go to. You don't have to have a friend to go to a Bible study, but it's going to some of those groups that help you connect with maybe just one person
Mhm. Yeah.
and having that friendship, asking them to coffee, taking that chance and finding if that is a click so that you could be that support. I had the opportunity to be in covenant sister relationships and accountability groups and mastermind groups through my ministry. All of those were ways that I was able to connect with people that had a like insight and a like interest in life and to keep some accountability and to keep me growing.
Hmm. And I find that some of my introverted friends talk more than I do, if you can imagine that, on one-on-one. But they like to be asked questions, and we as extroverts, it behooves us to make sure we ask good questions so that they have a chance to, well, feel closer to it and feel seen. If someone says to you, Peg, I don't feel God's presence in my heartache, how do you counsel them?
Hmm. I would first acknowledge that when we're heartbroken, it is a lonely place to be, and that loneliness is real. But because we feel lonely doesn't mean that God isn't there.
Mhm.
It means that we have we are at a point where our emotions have taken over control of our heart. And so, first of all, I would say pray to God and tell him, God, I'm so heartbroken, I can't even feel you. And ask those questions to God, where are you? I would also, um, I find comfort in the Psalms,
Me
and
too.
especially when I'm heartbroken, reading a psalm, um, is it's, one of the Psalms of lament, where David is saying, where are you, God? And reading those Psalms of lament, because in David's Psalms, they're like a prayer. And what I tell people, one thing I do is I weave in one he says, my enemies are surrounding me. So if it's not enemies, if it's just stress or heartbroken, I feel heartbroken and it is surrounded and taken over. So weave your situation into David's lament, because what David does in his lament, he eventually gets to the but you, Lord.
Mhm.
But you, Lord, see me in the miry clay. You, Lord, lift me up. You, Lord, wash me out. You, Lord, are there and fight my enemies. And so, what I find is when I'm so heartbroken that I don't feel the presence of God, if I can say the words of David's prayer, it helps me see the presence of God.
Oh, yeah. I heard a Bible teacher say years ago when I was in college that the Psalms are in the heart of the Bible for the heart of man. And
Hmm.
that's very
Yeah,
often where I go as well.
yeah.
How do you handle distractions in your life?
Well, okay, that's a great question because my devotion is devotions for the distracted heart.
Uh-huh.
So I've done a lot of thought and research into how we respond to distractions.
Oh,
And in the devotion, there is the distraction of dogs, the distraction of digital devices, the distractions of detours, the distractions of delays, and those are all distractions and interruptions in our life.
mm,
And I have to tell you, sometimes I don't handle them well. I let them fluster me and I help them, rob me of the margin in my life.
mm.
But if if I am in a good place and distractions and interruptions come into my life, I try to say, Lord, what are you teaching me with this distraction, this interruptions? Because sometimes he's delaying us for a purpose, distracting us for a purpose. Sometimes he's detouring us because he has another plan and wants us to go another direction. Sometimes a distraction is disciplining me and showing me how I'm making the wrong choices. And if I don't look back and process it, I can just go without learning the lesson that God wanted me to have. Um,
That's excellent.
Christ was distracted and interrupted all the
All the
time.
time. Mm.
And if you look at how Christ handled distractions, he paused and then he embraced it. And when you think of when he's on the way to heal Jairus's daughter, the woman with the issue of blood comes up and he doesn't say, no, I don't have time. I got people to see and places to go. He stops and says, who touched me? And he takes time to tell her, daughter, your faith has made you healed. And so it is looking at the examples that Christ used and how he handled distractions and interruptions. That's how I want to. But if we schedule ourselves, and I have done this, I have lived life, and my husband will say, I still struggle with this sometimes. When we live life where life every minute is scheduled, there is no margin for patience and to be able to process distractions, interruptions in a healthy way.
Mm.
They will only cause stress.
Say that line
So
again.
one of the,
Say, if we schedule every minute, start
if
that.
we schedule every minute,
Mhm.
there is no margin for distractions or interruptions because we don't have time for them and they will stress us out every time.
Mhm. So true.
And
There's that saying that our interruptions are God's appointments or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
And
And
it's like,
and sometimes they
I
are.
get annoyed. We get
Yeah.
annoyed. Who's coming to the door. Excuse me. What do you see as your legacy? This is a legacy podcast.
Well, I was been thinking a lot about this question because I knew you were going to ask it. And I think I have legacy. I look at my life in different areas, just so I could look at all my seasons of life. But I have legacy with my family. What do I want my legacy with my family and my grandchildren to be? I want them to know that God loves them and delights in them and has a purpose for them. And that I want them to see that in my life, that I have loved God with my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and I've loved others as myself. And when I think of that legacy with my family, it is my prayer that that's the same message I am giving in my ministry, that God delights in you, He sees you, and He has a purpose for your life, and that my life, my words will reflect that God is that God of love
Mm.
and that we can love others with our actions and our words.
How does your life show the welcoming heart of God?
Hmm. I would hope people would say that I'm an encourager and a listener. So my prayer is that, and my word is abide this year. So abiding in the vine, connecting with the Lord, savoring time with Him. We do that so that our life will then reflect His fruits.
Mm.
So I would hope that I'm reflecting the heart of God in those fruits of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gratefulness, and gentleness and self-control.
Mm.
And then I like to add gratefulness to that too.
Yeah, that's a good one to add. And it's nice that you can repeat them without peeking. I never can. Um, I think too that as I love that word abide, and was reviewing John 15 just this morning, trying not to be distracted, and I'm always hit by the verse where it says, "Without me, you can do nothing." And so, why bother doing anything if we're not doing it with Him, right? And so
Right,
we don't have
right,
to look at who's coming to our table into our lives or who needs the ministry. We just need to be so abiding that that spills out, and that abiding with Christ will be the enticement for someone to come to know him through our lives. And yet it's not something we have to be troubled about. It's something that we just do as far as abiding and then letting him do the work of bringing the fruit. Peggy, this has been, sorry, I called you Peggy. Peg has been very encouraging today, and I appreciate your time. Would you tell us the free resource that you're offering?
Oh, I'm happy to. It is a prayer workbook.
Mm,
And what it is a workbook that gives you ideas of different ways to pray that maybe you have not thought about. Many times we think when we pray, we need to sit in a chair or be on our knees with our hands folded or our hands raised up. But it talks about praying using acronyms, praying using physical objects, praying unceasingly. How can you pray unceasingly throughout the day? Praying when you're walking, through art, through music. So it gives all these different ideas of prayer and hopefully expanding your idea of the many ways that you can talk to Jesus.
mm, so wonderful. Well, you will find more about Peg and her ministry and her books that are on Kindle as well as print versions on Amazon. And Peg, thank you so much for your time today. We were
Thank you.
blessed to have you here.